It is truly an honor to be here. This is a little deja vu for me. So 8 years ago, the gentleman you heard from this morning, Matt Hunt, invited me to speak, and it was at a forum at Best Buy, and it was all about failure. So I feel like I've come full circle. I had a little more hair back then, maybe looked a little younger. The reason Matt reached out to me is because my business had just been cut from Best Buy. Now when I say my business, let me be very clear. It wasn't my division. It wasn't where I was assigned to work. This was a company that I had founded and sold to Best Buy 2 years prior. This was my baby, and it was gone. And so, before I tell you the story, I think it's important to share a little something with you. Matt, back then, wasn't the confident speaker about failure that you saw this morning. Here's how Matt approached me. He's like, Bill, I really want you to share your lessons learned. Sure, no problem, happy to do it. There's one catch. Boy, how do I put this? How do I say this? We'd like to, if you're okay, can we call it the failure forum? Sure, no problem. If I let my Southern show a little bit, I would probably have said fail yeah at that particular point in time. And so the reason I tell you that story is because learning to deal with failure is a bit of a journey. You're all going to have to go through it because there is a social stigma. Just as Matt had to sort of get up the courage to talk to me about failing, we all have to learn that failure truly is, as each speaker has described today, an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. Now, there are many definitions of entrepreneurs out there in the world. I have my opinion, just like you, and I don't think it's about a person who has a great business idea who knows how to make it come to life. I really don't. I believe entrepreneurship is really more about that little fire that burns deep inside you, that when everyone else tells you to stop, you figure out a way to go. When you fail, you don't lay down, you get back up and you try it again. I think that's truly what entrepreneurship's about, and I think that's why you guys are all here today. So it's really, truly a pleasure to see you. So I'm digressing a little bit. Let me talk a little bit about the story. So in 2002, a business partner and I created a little business called Clubtix. It was an online community. Now, when I speak to you about it today, you're all going to go, yeah, I get it. Makes a lot of sense. But you got to remember, in 2002, Mark Zuckerberg was still in junior high, so there was no Facebook. MySpace was still in a garage. There was no concept around social media. It didn't exist. So I like to say we were a bit of pioneers in the space. So here was the concept. We are going to create these clubs. A club can be any group of people that you designate. And it will be a closed community that you can buy and sell sporting tickets, concert tickets. It was a place of commerce. Okay? Now, we had two primary customer segments. The first, companies. Corporations own sporting tickets like there's no tomorrow. They use them with clients. They use them with their employees. They use them with anyone they want to entertain. However, they are a pain to manage. So one of our target segments was to give them a platform where they could create a closed community that they could manage this inventory. Our second target segment was the people who go in together to buy the season ticket. Anybody here do that? Yeah, I got a few hands. That's a pain, isn't it? You fight over who gets which game. Then you got all this inventory that no one wants. So we created a platform to allow this to take place. And you could have any number of clubs. I like to say we were pioneers in the social media space. So from 2002, 2004, the business was starting to take off. And it was growing. And I was working a day job at Best Buy with Matt. And towards the end of 2004, the business was getting so successful, I had come to a crossroads. I had to choose my baby or my career. Best Buy, Clubtix. Which way am I going to go? So I made the decision, I'm going to go with Clubtix. So I went and sat down with my boss, essentially to resign. And the conversation did not go the way I thought it was going to go. She immediately grabbed me and said, we got to go see the chief operating officer. Okay. We go see the chief operating officer. We want to buy your company. You kidding me? We want to buy the company. So sure enough, January of 2005, we sold Clubtix to Best Buy. I got to combine my day job and my night job. I just became part of a $55 billion company. If you are an entrepreneur, you just won the lottery. Or did you? Absolutely not. Once you get purchased by a big company, a lot of people want to start talking to you. And guess who they are? IT security, audit committee, privacy offices, the compliance team. Everybody who plays defense for the company wants to talk to you. So your first 2, 3, 4 months are mired in them telling you everything you've got to do to become compliant and stay alive in the organization. We're shutting you down if you don't do these things. Literally, the list of stuff that I had to do, the cost, was more than my first year's revenue target. Okay, that's the price you got to pay, I'll pay it. Right? I'm inside this big behemoth. I'm going to get the leverage, the big enterprise. I will pay the price. No problem. Happy to do it. Once you get that wave taken care of, now you get to go have the dialogues you want to have, right? So you want to sit down with marketing and merchants and all these other people who can help you grow your business. Guess what? They have 5 times more work than they have staff. So where do you think the new guy shows up on the priority list? I would love to tell you I was at the end of the list, but the reality is I couldn't even see the end of the list from where I stood. Way off the beaten path. And I think this is what honestly makes, and I'll call it intrapreneurship, harder than entrepreneurship. Because if you're an entrepreneur, and I've started and sold 3 companies, if you're an entrepreneur and somebody tells you no, what do? Fine, I'll go somewhere else. When you're inside a big company, you can't do that. So I'll give you a very specific example. The chief marketing officer was a friend of mine. We'd known each other for years. Once I sold my company to Clubtix, I couldn't get a meeting with the guy, okay? Because he knew I wanted something. So one day I go to his marketing department. All I want to do is get a little plug of Clubtix in the Sunday morning circular. You guys remember those circulars from Best Buy? That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. Well, I got told no. And by the way, we can't do anything for you for 6 months. Okay, so as a good entrepreneur, what do? I call up the marketing agency that I had used for years and said, hey, can you help me out? You're already laughing because you know the punchline. How fast do you think I got a meeting with him? In about 3 minutes, my phone was ringing. Because not only does he control his own resources, but he controls any and all vendor relationships that you may create. And I had just used a non-sanctioned vendor to do work for Best Buy. So as an intrapreneur, you don't have a free open marketplace to work with. Okay? So that's just one example. So my point in all of this is that getting inside the big organization isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be. So 8 years ago when Matt asked me to speak, I shared 8 lessons learned from that experience. I'm going to share them again with you today. Now, he was kind enough to give me an hour and a half back then. Today I think I have like maybe 12 minutes left. So I'm going to go a little fast, but grab me on breaks. I'll be here all day. I'd love to share more about it. So the first lesson that I'd like to share, listen to your inner voice. I cannot stress that enough. There are going to be lots of experts who want to tell you how to do something, when you should do something, where you should do something, who you should do something with. And if your inner voice is saying nothing to you, fine. Feel free to listen to them. But if your inner voice is telling you something different, absolutely listen to it. I love the quotes you had up earlier about the experts saying, you know, don't be into the computers and all this other stuff. Because as the entrepreneur, you are naturally probably pushing the universe. You are probably pushing on the ecosystem. And your voice is what you need to use as your guide. Two, and this is probably a little more if you're inside a big company, this concept of go big, go home. If you are fortunate enough to ever get purchased by a big company, or if you are involved in an innovation inside a big company, they do not want $100,000 returns. In some cases, they might not even want $1 million returns. They're looking for billion-dollar ideas. I remember sitting in front of an executive vice president, and he said, tell me what the next billion-dollar idea is for Best Buy. I'm like, I can't tell you the next idea, but I can tell you it doesn't look like a billion-dollar idea. You sort of find your way to that. But if you are an entrepreneur, you've got to go big, right? That doesn't mean be risky and reckless, but it does mean placing big bets. You do not have the luxury of time to increment your business. You've got about 2 years was about the lifespan of the average innovation at Best Buy, and you get shot. And I've talked to people at other companies that seems to be fairly traditional. You've got a 2 to 3 year window. If you don't knock it out of the park, you're done. 3, and I think this does definitely connect with entrepreneurs as well as intrapreneurs. You need to make news on a regular basis. You've got to be relevant. You're not only competing for currency and capital, you're competing for people's attention spans. This could be a new product launch, this could be signing a big contract, this could be some industry award, this could be just publishing knowledge capital out into the ecosphere. But on a regular basis, you need to make news. This is your momentum. If you don't have that, people will lose interest very, very fast. 4, this may take a second to explain. Big companies. Who here works at a big company? Okay, so about a third maybe. If you work at a big company, you play to win. What does that mean? That means you play offense and defense. You have strategies in your company to figure out how to grow the top line, how to grow the bottom line. But every one of those strategies have a defensive angle. They always analyze what you can lose. Matter of fact, some people in that organization will be overly preoccupied with what it is you can lose. So big companies play to win, offense and defense. But what do we as entrepreneurs do? We play like we cannot lose, right? I love the story earlier of Jonathan where he went all in. You know, I saw a great idea, I went all in. And guess what? That's what entrepreneurs tend to do. And where that gets to be a problem is when you're sitting down and the legacy corporate people are sitting with the innovator inside the big company and they're having discussions. They're coming from different mindsets, right? What do you mean I got to worry about this going wrong or that going wrong? Of course it's going to work. You're going to run into that. I would say this is a place actually where entrepreneurs can learn from big companies. It's probably a healthy thing to consider the downside, right, Jonathan? It's a healthy thing to consider the downside of what it is you're trying to do. There's another sort of psychological difference. I like to say big companies have a visual impairment. They would tell you that I have a visual impairment. What do I mean by that? If you were an entrepreneur, before your business even starts, you can see it. It's real. I can touch it. I know how every process is going to work. I know how the customers are going to interact with me. I know about my supply chain. I know about my technology. I have thought through those details and it is real. As an entrepreneur, believing is seeing. But for a big company, seeing is believing, right, Rajiv? It was on your slide earlier. I loved it. Seeing is believing. They need tests. They need customer focus groups. They need experiments. They need pilots. And as the innovator and the entrepreneur, that is going to bug the heck out of you. Because you already know the idea works, but you've got to go through this to prove it to them. And again, I think this is a place where the entrepreneur can actually learn from the company. It is good to do these pilots. It's good to do these tests. It's good to fail. There's a saying that I've said 1,000,000 times in my career. If you are ever successful without failure, or if anybody ever comes to you and says they're successful and they cannot describe their failures, that is just sheer luck. It honestly is luck. To find your way through the forest, you got to run into a tree. Next, the compliance tidal wave. Who here wants to do their job to the minimum expectation? Nobody. I don't see anybody raising their hand saying me, 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 me. So if you go into a big corporation and you're dealing with the audit committee or the privacy people or the IT security people, do you think they want to do their job to the minimum? If this is the line of compliance, they're going to be way up here because they don't want to just meet expectations. They want to be above reproach. There's nothing you can do about the tidal wave except expect it and don't get frustrated with it. They're going to hold you to a higher standard. It's just part of what they do. If you're an entrepreneur, it might be good to actually self-reflect and take some of that in yourself. Because if you do grow, it's good to know where the possible landmines might exist. Hire generalists. I've made this mistake so many times in my career. When I'm starting a new innovation, starting a new business, I will try to find the smartest person on a very specific topic because I think that's what's going to make me successful. And I don't know why I can't get it through my thick skull. That's not how this works. When you are small and you are in innovation mode, it is very important that the workers understand how everything connects. Right? How an action over here is going to create an implication over there. When you hire deep, deep specialists, and you know the people I'm talking about, they are so smart at whatever it is they do, they have blinders on for everything else in the world. They're going to be disruptive. Not because they want to be disruptive, it's just because they're going to maximize their one element and forget about everything else. It's almost like having that one instrument in the orchestra that just plays way louder than everybody else. If you need someone like that on your team, contract for it, right? Just hire a contractor, come in, advise you. But try to make your team up of people who have overlapping knowledge so that they can communicate, they can interact, they can be successful like a chain, right? They can build strength. So I know it's a strange concept, but it really will make a difference. And last but not least, big businesses cannot scale down. I have spent many years helping big companies learn how to scale up, how to make 10,000 of this, and how to process so many requests of that, and how do you take in 4,000 phone calls a day. At Christmas time, Best Buy hires 11,000 customer service agents. They know how to do that. Go try asking them for 2. Can I have 2? They don't know how to do that. Okay, so these are the 8 lessons learned that I shared then. I think they're as relevant today. Hopefully you got some value out of it. Now, a little bit for the end of the story. The day I gave that presentation was my next to last day at Best Buy. My boxes were packed, sitting on my desk. I was prepared to walk out. Just so happened there was an executive sitting in the room. Now, I had nothing to lose when I gave that presentation. So I'm gonna speak the truth, right? Right? Must have worked, because I don't think I made it 3 steps out of the room before the executive grabbed me and said, we want to have a discussion. And so they handed over to me this business unit called Best Buy for Business. They sell to schools like Carlson and to restaurants. You've all been the benefactor. If you've ever eaten at Applebee's or Buffalo Wild Wings, all those TVs and everything were put in by Best Buy for Business. If you've been to the Twin Stadiums, all those TVs were Best Buy for Business. So they said, it's losing money, take it over. I took the 8 lessons that I just shared with you, with a few others, and in 3 years, we doubled the revenues of that organization. Now, I'm not talking going from 10 to 20. We went from $250 to $500 million. So we doubled our revenues in 3 years. Our bottom line went through the roof. I mean, we suddenly were being talked about in the Wall Street Journal for our business-to-business play. So failure doesn't have to be the end. Failure is often the place of renewal, right, as you talked about. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to talking to you later.